The door to the bedchamber burst open with such force that the candle flames flickered, and the ladies in the room froze. In the doorway stood the King of France. Tall, imposing, with a confident smile on his lips, he made no effort to hide his impatience. His gaze immediately found Marie de Medici. The young woman leapt to her feet, unable to believe her eyes. She had expected to meet her husband only in a few days, yet here he was. A wave of heat caught her off guard, her cheeks flushed, her heart pounded wildly. Hastily, she dropped into a curtsy, lowering her head to conceal her embarrassment. Henry IV was in no hurry to break the moment. He approached slowly, studying her face. In the portrait he had been shown, her features had seemed somewhat coarse, but in person, Marie was entirely different: wide, guileless eyes, wavy chestnut hair, full lips that seemed ready to smile. She was far from the courtly ideal of beauty, yet there was something undeniably captivating, something real, about her. "Rise, madam," he said gently, lifting her by the hand and leisurely bringing her fingers to his lips. Marie obeyed, but still did not dare to meet his eyes. "You are even lovelier than in your portrait," the king went on, openly admiring her. "I have long awaited this day, and I can wait no longer." She did not know how to respond. Her French was far from perfect, and her voice felt too unsteady. Noticing her hesitation, Henry gestured to the Duchess of Nemours. "Translate," he commanded, without taking his eyes off Marie. The Duchess leaned in and softly repeated the king's words. "I was so eager to see you that I arrived early. My chambers are not yet prepared, so tonight, I intend to spend the night in your bed." Marie felt the blood rush to her face. She gasped in shock. "Is that proper, sire?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. But Henry only laughed, pleased with the effect his words had produced. The Italian princess who became a queen. Marie de Medici was born on the 26th of April, 1575 in Florence, into one of the most powerful families in Europe. Her father, Grand Duke of Tuscany Francesco I, was a member of the renowned Medici dynasty, which had shaped the fate of Italian cities for 2 centuries, fostering the arts and commerce. The Medici were not merely wealthy, their riches rivaled those of royal dynasties, and their influence extended far beyond Italy. Marie was born into the splendor of the Tuscan court, but her childhood was marked by tragedy. In 1577, when she was just 2 years old, her mother, Joanna of Austria, died suddenly. The official cause was said to be an unfortunate fall down the stairs, but whispers in court suggested it may have been murder. Joanna, a member of the Habsburg house, had always been an outsider in Florence, and her death fueled many rumors. Francesco I soon remarried, taking his longtime mistress, Bianca Capello, as his wife. The new duchess had little affection for her husband's children, and young Marie found herself pushed to the margins of her father's attention. Unlike many princesses of her time, she was not raised at a lavish court, but in relative seclusion, away from political intrigue. She grew up in an atmosphere of Catholic piety and Tuscan traditions, surrounded by books, works of art, and tutors who taught her not only languages and courtly manners, but also the fundamentals of governance. Despite her relative isolation, Marie quickly became aware of the legacy she was destined to inherit. Following the untimely deaths of her siblings, only her elder sister, Eleonora, survived. She was left as the sole heiress to the vast Medici fortune. This made her one of the most sought-after brides in Europe. Court chroniclers wrote that her wealth even surpassed the treasury of the French crown. It was little wonder that many royal houses began considering her as a highly desirable match. However, there was no rush to arrange her marriage. Her father understood that such a wealthy heiress had to marry someone who would bring not only prestige but also political advantage to the dynasty. Her future remained uncertain until one of the most powerful monarchs in Europe, King Henry IV of France, turned his attention to her. And so began a story that would change not only Marie's life but also the fate of France. Choosing a husband, a political calculation. By the late 16th century, France, exhausted by religious wars, faced the urgent need to strengthen the monarchy. Henry IV, known as Henry the Great, was a charismatic yet highly pragmatic ruler. He had once been a Protestant, but to secure the throne, he converted to Catholicism, famously declaring, "Paris is worth a mass." However, this alone was not enough. His power remained precarious, and the country desperately needed stability. The key issue was that of an heir. Henry IV had numerous mistresses and illegitimate children, but only one son of royal blood, his 8-year-old child from his previous marriage to Marguerite de Valois. However, that union had long since been annulled, and France required a new queen who could provide a legitimate heir to secure the dynasty's future. The choice of a bride was not merely a personal matter but a strategic decision. A marriage alliance with Spain, the powerful Catholic Empire, seemed unlikely, as the Spanish Habsburgs still regarded Henry with suspicion. The Austrian Habsburgs, too, showed little interest in offering their princesses. That left Italy, and it was there that France turned its attention to the powerful Medici family. The Medicis, the perfect match. Marie de Medici, the sole heiress to her family's vast fortune, was one of the most sought-after brides in Europe. Her dowry amounted to over 600,000 gold écus, a sum that could significantly improve France's precarious financial situation. But money was not the only advantage of this marriage. Though the Medicis did not hold a royal title, they were closely connected to the Papal See and the European Catholic elite. This meant that an alliance with Marie could strengthen Henry IV's position among Catholics and secure his dynasty's legitimacy. Moreover, the political climate in Italy favored the match. Ferdinand I de' Medici, Grand Duke of Tuscany and Marie's uncle, was keen to reinforce ties with France. A strong supporter of the Catholic faction, he saw this marriage as an opportunity to enhance his family's influence on the international stage. Negotiations were lengthy, but in the end, an agreement was reached. Henry IV, already in his 40s, understood that this marriage was a necessary sacrifice for political gain. A wedding without the groom. On the 5th of October, 1600, the official wedding ceremony took place. However, there was one significant detail: the groom was absent. Instead of the King of France, Marie stood beside his proxy, Roger de Bellegarde, Henry's trusted representative. Proxy marriages were common practice for dynastic unions at the time, but for Marie, it must have felt strange, perhaps even unsettling. She understood that a marriage by proxy was merely a formality, but she would soon have to cross the Alps, leave her native Florence behind, and travel to France to meet a husband she had never seen. Their first encounter was to take place in Lyon. Marie de Medici had no idea what to expect from her new husband. She had been told that Henry IV was intelligent and decisive, but far from an ideal spouse. He was admired for his sharp wit, soldierly directness, and jovial nature, yet it was no secret at court that he was an incorrigible philanderer. She had also heard that the king was far from selective in his romantic entanglements and that, even on the eve of their wedding, he remained devoted to his mistress, Henriette d'Entraigues. There was no turning back now. Marie could only hope that their union would bring her not just a crown, but a place in her husband's heart. The meeting in Lyon, passion and strategy. On the 3rd of December, 1600, Marie de Medici arrived in Lyon. Her journey from Italy had been long and exhausting, but the most significant event still lay ahead: her formal wedding to the King of France. The ceremony was scheduled for the 17th of December, and while Marie spent her days in Lyon, the court was busy preparing for a lavish celebration. Marie had mixed emotions. On the one hand, her fate was now sealed. She was about to become queen of one of the most powerful nations in Europe. On the other, she had never seen her future husband before. Everything she knew about him came from court gossip. Henry IV was said to be intelligent, charismatic, a warrior, and a skilled statesman, but also a man of fiery temperament and insatiable passion for women. An unexpected intrusion. On the 9th of December, just days before the wedding, Marie was dining in the luxurious chambers of the Bishop of Lyon. The dishes were served on gilded trays, yet she barely touched her food. She was tense. The whole city was buzzing. The king has arrived. Suddenly, there was a commotion. The door swung open, and her groom burst into the room. Marie leapt to her feet, her heart pounding. The man before her was nothing like the idealized figure from portraits. Henry IV was not tall, broad-shouldered, dressed simply yet somewhat carelessly, with mischievous sparks dancing in his eyes. "Madam, our marriage has already been blessed in Florence," he declared cheerfully. "Which means we are already husband and wife. Isn't that a wonderful reason to spend the night together?" Marie blushed. She had, of course, heard of the king's untamed temperament, but she had not expected such boldness. "But, sire, the wedding has not yet taken place," she murmured, struggling to maintain her composure. Henry laughed and stepped closer. "Ah, mere details. All formalities have been met, and now I need only confirm that my wife is as beautiful as her portrait." Marie took a step back, but it was too late. The king had already pulled her into an embrace, his lips lowering towards hers. The first night. Perhaps Marie had hoped that someone would intervene, that her ladies-in-waiting would protest, or that some excuse would arise to delay the inevitable. But everyone understood, refusal was not an option. Henry IV was king, and he was not accustomed to hearing no. Raised under the strict traditions of the Tuscan court, Marie hesitantly nodded. That night, she became Henry's wife not only in name but in fact. By morning, as he left Marie's chambers, the king radiated satisfaction. Later, with a smile, he remarked to his confessor, "My wife possesses rare charms." Thus began her life as Queen of France. Married life and the first disappointments. On the 17th of December, 1600, the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Lyon shimmered in the glow of 1,000 candles. All of France had eagerly awaited this moment. King Henry IV was finally taking a lawful wife. Henry stood beside Marie de Medici, who looked magnificent in her lavish gown of golden brocade. Her thick, chestnut hair was adorned with a diamond tiara, and the long train of her dress was carried by her ladies-in-waiting. The king, known for his free-spirited nature, appeared unusually composed. He gazed at his wife with satisfaction. His dynasty would at last have a legitimate heir. When the priest declared them husband and wife, Henry smiled broadly. At that moment, he still believed their union would bring him not only political advantages but also personal happiness. The birth of an heir. The king's hopes were soon fulfilled. Just a few months later, Marie brought him joyful news: she was expecting a child. Henry was overjoyed. Despite his well-known passion for romantic intrigues, he showed genuine affection toward Marie during her pregnancy. He ensured she was comfortable, inquired about her well-being, and even temporarily reduced the number of meetings with his mistresses. On the 27th of September, 1601, in Fontainebleau, the long-awaited Dauphin was born, the future Louis XIII. For France, this was an event of national significance. The country had finally secured a legitimate heir, strengthening the king's position and easing tensions among Catholics, who still regarded Henry, a former Protestant, with suspicion. Henry did not hide his delight. He showered the Queen with gifts, held lavish celebrations in honor of his son's birth, and even seemed to spend more time with his wife. However, this period of family harmony did not last long. The first disappointment. A few months after their son's birth, Henry began to realize that Marie de Medici was not quite the woman he had imagined. Firstly, she was nothing like the light-hearted and charming ladies of the French court. On the contrary, Marie was serious, thoughtful, and prone to stubbornness. She did not share her husband's carefree attitude toward life and often disapproved of his numerous affairs. Secondly, her Italian entourage irritated not only the king but also the entire court. Marie trusted only her fellow countrymen and kept her distance from the French nobility, which led to resentment among the courtiers and the king's favorites. Behind her back, the French whispered, calling her an arrogant foreigner. But what displeased Henry most was her temperament. Initially appearing gentle and compliant, Marie increasingly revealed herself as strong-willed and quick-tempered. She was easily angered, capable of making a scene over a trivial matter, and never forgave an insult. Henry, accustomed to cheerful and accommodating mistresses, soon began to find his wife's company burdensome. The beginning of the rift. In January 1601, the king, citing matters of state, announced that he was urgently leaving Lyon to return to Paris. "You will follow later, but do not hurry, madam," he told Marie. "You must take care of yourself, you may be expecting another child." His words sounded caring, but in reality, Henry had entirely different plans. Instead of heading to Paris, he made his way to Verneuil, where his longtime mistress, Henriette d'Entraigues, was waiting for him. He spent several days with her, and soon the marquise announced that she was expecting the king's child. Her baby was born just a few weeks after the Dauphin. Thus began the long and growing estrangement between Henry and Marie, a divide that would only deepen with time. Echoes of passion, the beginning of the end. The birth of the Dauphin should have strengthened Marie de Medici's position at the French court, but instead, it had the opposite effect. Despite holding the title of queen and being the mother of the heir to the throne, she remained an outsider among the French nobility. The court was rife with intrigue, and the king's mistresses and ladies-in-waiting did everything they could to make Marie feel unwelcome. Henry IV, who had once eagerly anticipated their marriage, soon lost interest in his wife completely. His time was consumed by his mistresses, affairs of state, and military campaigns. He visited her chambers less and less frequently, and their interactions became limited to rare and formal meetings. Marie soon realized that her role had been reduced to childbearing and that she held no real power at court. She continued to fight for influence, but her position remained precarious. The French aristocracy looked down on her, an Italian, surrounded by her own countrymen, unable to integrate into their world. Moreover, her fiery temper and tendency toward intrigue only fueled the court's hostility. But fate was already preparing an unexpected turn. The death of Henry IV and the rise of Marie de Medici. In the spring of 1610, Henry IV was at the height of his power. He had strengthened the French monarchy, reconciled Catholics and Protestants, and was preparing for a new war against the Habsburgs. However, his reign was cut short unexpectedly. On the 14th of May, 1610, the king was traveling through the streets of Paris in his carriage when François Ravaillac, a fanatical Catholic who believed Henry was plotting war against Spain, approached him. The assassin stabbed the king in the chest with a dagger. Henry IV died on the spot. Marie de Medici was destined to outlive her husband. But instead of mourning, fate presented her with a new challenge, the fight for power. The Regency era. The king's death opened a door for Marie, where she no longer had to remain in the shadows. Her son, Louis XIII, was only 9 years old, and by tradition, it was the Queen Mother who assumed the role of regent. Marie did not let the opportunity slip away. She immediately seized power, surrounded herself with Italian advisors, and began shaping her own policies. Thus began a new chapter in French history, the Regency of Marie de Medici, an era marked by ambition, intrigue, and conflict. Just yesterday, she had been an unloved wife. Now, the fate of an entire nation depended on her decisions. If you enjoyed diving into this historical moment, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support helps us create even more fascinating content. Now it's your turn to share your thoughts. Do you think Marie de Medici was a good ruler, or did her reign bring more harm than good? Let us know in the comments.